Welcome to Warblog. Today we're looking at two games, but we're only really going to be sort of looking at one. I'm not sure how I'm going to do this, but basically these two here, as you can see from the dates, this is the 26th to 28th of July 1988. They're both the Iran-Iraq War, and this is the 29th to the 30th. So it's a 4-day period split over two. So in a nutshell, what you've got is these the People's Mujahadeen of Iran units. They see an opportunity to sort of to take a lot of ground. Now they think that the people will sort of rise up and support them as they sort of come through these towns, but they don't. But that's not really sort of the main issue. Really, they sort of overextend themselves, and then the Iranians, they don't really sort of strike back until they've sort of got it says about 90 miles. I actually sort of calculated as 145 miles, but that was 145 kilometers, so I've sort of gauged it on that, but it's not too bad because you could possibly get there within that time frame. This is sort of this operation, so that's Operation Forough Javidan. The main sort of background to it is that the both Iran and Iraq have accepted the United Nations Security Council Resolution 598 to end the war on the 8th of August. So these Mujahadeen-e-Khalq forces see an opportunity to essentially invade Iran in earnest to some extent before that deadline, obviously on the 26th of July. So it's quite cheeky in that sense. But the point is, the reason it's divided up into two games is because if you play this, what you'll notice is there's not a lot in between. Now, the second game is actually incorporated into this one as well, so you can do it with this as well. So, for example, what you'll see is this is all the resistance there is, because there was basically no resistance, just a few of these Peshmerga units and some Revolutionary Guards. However, I don't know how long it's going to take, but I imagine that it will take a fair while, and plus the delay that the Iranians put in not attacking instantly. So what we've actually got here is obviously the People's Mujahadeen of Iran, supported with the Iraqi air power. So that, it wasn't as though this was not the Iraqis. So there's the main units, which you'll see there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then following on from that, on turn 19 they start to get the air power in. So this sort of, Jesus Christ, so what you get here is the Iranian air power coming in on turn 19, and then they get a bunch of paratroopers. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap over to the other one just to sort of put that into perspective. So when you finished Operation Forough Javidan, what happens is on the 29th, when the Iranians have sort of gauged it to some extent, they carry out a counterattack, which is Operation Mersad. So what we're saying is you should end up looking something like this. Now, I'm going to actually do this a little more like this. So I've got both tabs open. So essentially, this game, what you'll find, this is whatever that place is. Well, what's under there? Kermanshah. So although you can get up to Kangavar, that wasn't actually sort of specified. If you look at 145 kilometers into Iran, 90 miles, it's about there. I did it with a sort of gauge, and I gauged it along the roads. But if you did it by how the crow flies, it could be about here, etc., etc. I'm not sure how far they got. I think they got just a touch beyond this. But anyway, that's the second map. The Operation Mersad is more of a window like that there. So this isn't sort of the same scale. It's not them spread from there to there. It's them spread from there to there. More historical. The reason being is because if you play this, you probably won't end up with the historical setup, and that's the sort of thing that I'm sort of keen to emphasize in this video, really. I mean, it's ironic. It's not ironic. It's peculiar. It's a coincidence that it's very, very similar to the other one that I've done, Mutakala and Kayaka, because Kayaka happened first. And if you were to play it, you would not end up with the historic situation that the Battle of Mutakala represents. So again, we've got these two things. So if you were to invade down there, you wouldn't end up probably with a line. You might do it slightly differently, and not necessarily end up like this as it was. So what then? So what I'm saying is, you can, on turn 20, you can start to get the troops in that appear. And so what happens is the Iranians get their air power. They get some helicopters, or they use their helicopters. They get them. They start attacking. But the most important thing, and I think the most quite interesting thing of it, they use paratroopers. It doesn't necessarily specify how many, but we got 10 units. So basically, the idea is that you would land your paratroopers somewhere to block this road. So you've got a lot of air power, and paratroopers to come in, so you could land a bunch there, and all you'd need is 2 in there, and that would probably block this road. Now, one of the key things about this whole scenario is, you'll see here, this sort of, they just bombed all the vehicles, and it was known as the something of death. Yeah, that's an easy way to get it. So basically, it says that by this time, well, the Iranians had achieved local air superiority as a consequence of their strategy of temporarily giving ground. The Iranian paratroopers landed behind the overstretched MEK lines, with the Iranian F-4 Phantoms bombing the Mujahideen vehicles on the Kermanshah highway. Afterwards, Army aviation helicopters launched an air attack using anti-tank missiles. By this time, most of the enemy armour was destroyed in a miniature version of the Highway of Death during the Persian Gulf War. So essentially, there's another sort of picture of it there. Pretty sort of straightforward, but the point being that this is sort of like the Highway of Death. They're all straggled along here, and the Iranians use their air power to decimate them. I'm not sure how much damage you'll be able to do just with the air power in this scenario. Maybe I should give them more. And then the key thing, sort of following that, they bring a lot of units in from the south, which is Khuzestan, so Iranian Army and Revolutionary Guard units, and that's sort of all of this stuff. Although I think these two, I'm not sure which ones come on where, but basically yeah. So these first two are there. So basically, from the south, you're getting all of this. Well, from top to bottom. So it doesn't really matter. You get the point. All of that. So that will all come on from here, basically, one bit at a time. So you'll be able to block the roads with the paratroopers. These units will be presumably fighting their way back because that's their objective. If not, then the fight can probably go this way, or however you want to play it. It might not be easy to reflect the historic sort of perspective of it all exactly, but you're nearer the mark than you are by playing Operation Forough Javidan from start through the full 4 days. I'm not going to really I don't want to do much more on that because it's sort of more of an explanatory video that covers both of them. I might do a separate video that just sort of plays this through, and a separate video that just plays the other one through. But it's as I say, it's a bit of a coincidence that it follows on from the Uganda-Tanzanian war, or as being sort of scenarios that sort of mate, so to speak, and you'd be unlikely to sort of replicate naturally by an organic sort of playthrough. Again, it's exactly sort of the why reason I choose these kinds of scenarios in the sort of the way I do, because there are some games out there that actually say, well, this is the Iran-Iraq war, and you think, oh, fantastic. But as soon as you get past turn one, you're ahistoric. You're not learning anything more, or and to be quite honest, the sort of the historic value of it's probably gone out the window from turn one. It's the same with just about any game. I mean, unless it's a very tight battle. I mean, for example, you could probably play Gettysburg fairly sympathetically to the historic sort of narrative, and many other battles when they're in there, but you probably couldn't play the Shenandoah campaign as sympathetically and end up at Gettysburg. You probably end up somewhere else. I mean, I played that game once, and whilst I can't say, I don't think it was actually I can't remember what game it was, but all I can remember is something, sort of a large engagement in the Pigeon Hills, which was sort of, in the middle, bore no relation to anything historic at all. So what I'm saying is, if you were to sort of try and play the whole Iran-Iraq war, you just wouldn't end up with these sorts of things. I mean, to start off with, the reason they do the battle is because of the impending peace treaty that they've both accepted through the 598 resolution to end the war on the 8th of August. And again, you can't sort of reflect that in a war game, because you would say, well, okay, you'd have to have an arbitrary rule that says, that sort of modelled the state of peace negotiations with the United Nations, and all those sorts of things become very sort of, I don't want to use the word granular really, but they become very specific to a sort of a scenario, and you can't model this because on a general level, because it's not going to have anything to do with the way peace negotiations worked in any other wars, for example the Vietnam War, or anything of that nature, etc. So anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. Hopefully you think these two scenarios are of interest. Sometimes it's quite hard to actually sort of, not so much to find scenarios. I mean, there's no shortage of doing that, but sort of finding things that seem quite peculiar and unique, and just that have sort of a degree of variance that isn't really just sort of like pretty much just like any other game. And I think this is has enough sort of intriguing aspects to it to make it quite an entertaining sort of piece of history to pick up and possibly to play through. In this one, I think you will be in here. You definitely got a playthrough, because they can probably fight out. So if you would say, okay, we'll play this ahistorically, you've got that. Here you're probably going to get through this fairly easily, but at the end, when you get these units on turn 20, you've probably got quite a sort of, I don't want to say balance, but you've got a challenge. So whoever plays the Iranians will not have a lot to do for the first 20 turns. Now, if you play this on print and play, that might not be so bad, and you might be able to get through the first 20 turns quite quickly. I'm certainly not going to try and battle through the first 20 turns just in order to sort of prove a point. But anyway, I'll leave it at that. Remember, if you want to play this or the other one on both of them, etc., sign up, get the game ad-free, play it with your friends online, print and play, and everything, and have lots of fun and all that. I'll speak to you later. Cheerio.